Everyone has a perception of power. Some consider power as success. Somebody consider power as position. For some, it is adoration of the masses. For some, it is a few likes on the social media. How you define success is not universal. Every person's definition of success is unique, and you cannot really argue on their sense of success. Countless people enter competitive examination in hopes to get into positions of power, something like civil services. And eventually, these people with degrees, qualifications, and other things, when they get into the positions of power, they become answerable to someone who may not have any education and can also be abused by these people in power. So, when you look at it, power is a very relative term. There is no absolute power in the world whatsoever. Even if you believe in God, there's no construct of absolute power with God because, as we know, the God is pretty much selective on how he wants to use power. The Rishis explain power as Shakti. And to get Shakti, this power, they advise people to be Shakta, to be deserving of power. So, how we become deserving of this power? There are countless tales in the Vedic text that explain power and ways to achieve power. For a great many people, in the tales of yours, the king was the one with the absolute power who could usher in prosperity or misery on the people, whatever they think. And yet, if you carefully read the Vedic text, the people who holded the real power were what we called as the Rajagurus. And no, Rajagurus were not like the today's saffron-clad people, the so-called swamis or the priest or something like that. To be honest, the religion has always been in positions of power, and it is always less about God and more about controlling the people because people are driven by guilt and fear. The religion addresses this notion of fear and guilt by salvation, by making something called as God and a way to accept it as God. But then these religious places of power too had limitations. As we see in the West, one church was divided into two and three, and there are countless churches around the world. Even if you look at the Islamic world, the Prophet Muhammad wanted the entire Arabia to be ruled by a Khalifa or what we call as Caliphate. But today we see that the entire Muslim Ummah is not really as united as they should have been. There are 55 Islamic nations divided into Shia and Sunni primarily, and nobody seems to get well with each other whatsoever. And yet, people believe that somehow religion unites. Somehow the cultural and ethnicity unites. But if you observe history, the one thing that is proven more than beyond doubts is the fact that even the most powerful of men were crumbled from their positions of power, not as much as by the external influences, but as internal factors, primarily their own minds, and then by those near them. Krishna, in his Gita, says it beautifully. He says, Dhyayet Vishayan Pumsa Sanghasteshopajayate Sanghat Sanjayate Kamaha Kramat Krodha Bijayate Krodat Bhavati Sammohaha Sammohat Smriti Vibhramaha Smriti Bhramshat Buddhinasho Pranashyati. He says, mind you, my friend, every misery in this world stems from Sangha. That when people get into association with each other, they build families, societies, clubs, or institutions, there is an inherent science that emerges that is about comparison, which leads to desire. When these desires are not met, which often they are, they that gives a way to anger. From anger comes bewilderment of memory, because when we love someone, we only say good things about them or even remember good things about them. Whereas when we hate someone, we only say something that is not true and something biased against them. Through this bewilderment of memory, disillusionment is born. And through the disillusionment, your intellect is destroyed. And through the destruction of intellect, everything is destroyed. So there is no subtle way to assume power and be happy. You can either have power or be happy. Which is why all the rishis of yore, although they built great empires, people like Bharadwaja, Parashara, Pishura, Manu, Shukracharya, and even Chanakya, they never got into the positions of power. They kept away from power. It took nearly 30 years for Chanakya to build the Mauryan Empire. And once the empire was built, once he established Chandragupta Maurya as the king, Amatya Katyayan as the minister and council of ministers, he said, "Now I am 60 years old. Now let me retire." And when he was moving out, Amatya Katyayan took courage, went to him and he said, "Acharya, you built this empire. You are old. You do not have the energy in you to take care of yourselves. Stay here. Enjoy the wealth. Let us take care of you." And Kautilya, also known as Chanakya, said, "Son, there are only two ends to power. One, either you relinquish power, or two, the power will relinquish you. If you relinquish the power, you are liberated. If the power relinquishes you, you are desecrated." Just look at the Middle East. During the Arab Spring, we saw countless monarchy crippling down. They were in power for over 2 to 3 decades on average, and yet nothing could stop their collapse, and their collapse was extremely disastrous. The rishis warn of three limitations of power. It is dukkha mishritam. The power is full of pain. It is two, it is atriptikatvam. It is never enough. No matter how much power you have, it is never enough. And three, bandhakatvam. It bounds you. Once you have power, you do not want to let it go. You let go your friends, you let go people, your values, your culture, your traditions, and everything, but you will never let go the power. Not unless you are a sage. And that is why the rishis always praised those kings. The kings like Bharata, after whom this country is called Bharat, the kings like Rama, the sages like Yudhishthira, because they had humility. If you look at Simhasana Dvatrimshika, there is a beautiful story. The story says that Bhojaraja found the throne of Vikramaditya and he brought it to his kingdom, to his capital. And he found a good auspicious day to ascend the throne. And this throne had 36 steps, which is why it's called as Dvatrimshika. There's 32 steps. And each step had a idol of a damsel. When he decided to step on the throne, when he put his leg on the first step, the damsel came to life and she said, "You know, Bhojaraja, this throne belonged to a great king called Vikramaditya, who was benevolent, strong, established, as well as philanthropic king. Are you nearly as benevolent, strong, resourceful, and philanthropic?" And Bhojaraja said, "Yeah, I too am philosopher. I'm strong. I defeated so many enemies. I feed so many people. I give so much of wealth, etc., etc." And then the damsel said, "Oh Bhoja, a person who is really great never speaks of his greatness. A person who is truly philanthropic never make a pomp of his philanthropy. The people who have really achieved never show off their achievement, and people who are powerful never show off their power. They are always humble." You don't seem to have any of this. The fact that you mentioned all your achievements has made you non humble. You are unworthy of this throne. Now be gone. You may think that this is a true story and that Bhojaraja was not really a deserving king. But as a matter of fact, this story was written in the court of Bhojaraja by his own courtiers. And the fact that the Bhojaraja had the humility to have this written and to make him look in such a less grace actually makes him a great king. Greatness in Vedic Sanskrit is called as Mahantam. Mahantam is made of two words, Mam or the ego self and Hantam or the end. When you relinquish your ego self, you become truly great. That is the greatness through which everything can be achieved. People respect you when you are truly great. You don't need to go on a propaganda scheme as it goes on today. The another thing what people do not understand is about power. Who is actually powerful? This story is beautifully told in a brilliant tale in what we call as Panchatantra. The story goes that there was a great rishi who went across the length and breadth of his country. And while he was going and he was taking a bath in a river, he found a small mouse baby being drowned in the water. He saved it and brought it back to life. And then, because he got attached to that baby mouse, he gave it life and made it into a girl, a human girl. He gave her the best of education, the best of culture, knowledge, and wisdom. And when she came of age, he decided that he is going to get her married to the most powerful person. And then he realized who could that be? And as the saying goes, Suryaha Pratyaksho Devata. Surya is the most benevolent giver, which means that he is powerful. So he went to the sun and he said, Sun, you are mighty. I want you to marry my daughter because I want my daughter to marry the strongest man so that he can protect her. And the sun said, Sire, it is true that I am strong, but you must understand, I am clouded by the clouds. My rays sometimes do not reach the earth when clouds stop them from entering. So technically, cloud is more stronger than me. Is that so? And the rishi went to the cloud. The cloud said, Yes, I can stop the rays of the sun from hitting the earth, but then I am stopped by the great Himalayas. So he went to the Himalayas, and the Himalayas said, Well, we are stronger to stop the cloud, but then, even a mouse can make holes in us, and we can't do anything about it. So he eventually went to the mouse and he found the scene a bit grotesque, but then his daughter fell for the king of the mouse. And then he turned her back to the mouse and gave it in marriage to the king of the mouse. What this story teaches us is that power is not something that is absolute. Even the most powerful people can lose their power by the acts of someone who is absolutely powerless. If you see the history, there are countless answers for it. Our mental conditioning in our society makes us to believe that we are powerless. We are taught that, oh, you have no power, that is why you need to study. Then we get into a job and we realize that, okay, now we are earning money, we have some power. But then we realize we have bosses, so we want to grow up. Then we realize that a company is not serving purpose, then we become entrepreneurs. So throughout our lives, we seek the pursuit of power without any clear idea about the power. And as a result, we live a life of misery. The Rishis explain power in phenomenal ways, and they have written commensurately in these regards. One of the most important teachings of the Rishis in this domain is what we call as Kootaniti. It is an exceptionally brilliant science as well as art, which can be used by even the most powerless people to make some quantitative difference in their lives as well as the lives of the society. And every time a king lost his mind, a Rajaguru would come and put him in place. There are countless stories about this Rajagurus who are also the Rishis. And these Rajagurus were powerful even than the king, which is why it said, Vidvatvam cha nripatvam cha naiva tulya kadachana swadeshe pujyate raja vidwan sarvatra pujyate. There is no comparison between a kinghood and a scholar, because a king is respected only so long as he has the power and only within the confines of his territory, whereas a scholar, a true scholar, a sage of wisdom, is respected everywhere, even though he has no material gains. He has no great wealth, because knowledge is the greatest wealth of all. In today's era, there is a bunch of people who are being spoken about like an electoral strategist, and a lot of people have begun to take shine upon these people, and they say that, oh, they are Kautilya, they are Chanakyas. Well, for those people who have this perception, this is the one last story I would like you to tell. Long ago, there was a king, and every time he was in trouble, he had some problem with his people or his state, he would seek the counsel of a rishi. And somehow the rishi would come to him whenever he had a trouble, give him a solution, and the king would be out of the problem. But when the king realized that this rishi begged on food and lived a very modest life, he said, why do you want to live in such a miserable state? Why don't you live in the kingdom? I'll give you a nice palace. I'll give people to serve you. Why don't you stay here? And the rishi said, son, the reason I'm here is because I wish the well for the world. For a sadhu like me, whole world is my family. I'm not attuned by the great shines of the splendor and wealth you have. I have a life. I'm content with it. Let me live like this. But king was not satisfied. And the king made a declaration, because those were the time when you didn't have mobile phone, internet, or even newspapers. And he made a declaration that any person wearing the garb of a saffron clad person with long beard and long hair, if he comes, the people should feed him great, delicious food and offer him whatever he wants. Now, it so happened that whenever a king tries to do something good, even today, even if a prime minister or a president of a country wants to genuinely do something good, there are a bunch of people who will misuse whatever the laws he is bringing in. And a lot of good for nothing people started adoring the robes of a saffron robes, started growing their hair and pretending to be a sadhu, and started extorting food and everything from people. The rishi came to know about it. So what the rishi did is that he went to what we call as a bar, and he asked for some what we call as this alcohol, and he consumed the alcohol. Now this news spread to everyone, including those bunch of idiots. They too went to the same place and they started drinking alcohol for free. And when king came to know about this, he felt furious. So he redacted the decree that he had given. Now, when it was redacted, the good for nothing people started doing, whatever the things they were doing to before the decree was done. But it became extremely difficult for the rishi to find food because nobody would give him any food anymore. So then he went to a goldsmith shop and he said, do you have something for me to eat? And the goldsmith said, I don't have anything except this molten gold. He said, that will do. And he drank what we call as the gold. This news also reached the king. The king was very sorry for all the debacle. He said, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to happen this to you. Please forgive me. And the Rajaguru said, King, your duty is to your people. You do work on that. I am not your responsibility. I am not like this because I am miserable. I am like this because I want to live in humility. What this story also says is that the most powerful person is also the most humble. So all the people in media who said that I made that person the prime minister or this person the president or whatever are not really the people. Sometimes it is accident, sometimes it is luck. But absolute power comes with discipline, and one of the most important discipline people in power need to do is what is called as humility. If you don't have humility, you don't deserve power. And if you have power and if you don't have humility, you will only have arrogance. And when you get that arrogance, you lose everything. If you need to know more about the principles of power, do consider taking up our course on Kutniti, which presents a great many dynamics about the mind and power beyond any realm that is available in the world today, because these teachings come from the great sages. I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, pranam and namaste.